This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Welcome to How's That Working For You Season 2. It's your girls Kat and V, but this time we're taking deeper dives into mental health and breaking stigmas. So get ready because things are about to get real and personal. How's That Working For You is a passion project created with the intention of creating space and awareness around mental health topics that are often hard to talk about. We are not professionals in the field of mental health, but we speak from our own personal experience and thoroughly conduct our own research to help educate others on why it's important to join this conversation.
Hey Kat, what's up?
Hey V, so I wanted to talk about my experience with yoga and how it's helped with my mental health and how it can help other people.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I just want to start off by kind of outlining what my experience with it is. I've been doing yoga since 2013 and I got certified about 2 years ago to teach yoga. But because I was practicing for so long before that, I knew quite a bit about the topic before I became a teacher. I don't know everything about yoga. I feel like I know enough to talk about why it's so powerful, why I like to teach it, and why I think other people should at least give it a shot if it's within their wheelhouse. Yoga's awesome because there's a type of yoga for everybody. It's not what most people tend to think when they think about yoga. It's not just for people who are flexible and can do crazy things with their body. Yoga is actually practiced more in the mind. It should be, at least, than otherwise. There's definitely merit to the saying that yoga does make you more flexible and it makes you more strong and whatever like that. But I think that the mental benefits really helped me, to say the least. There's this one article that I found around the time that I got really into yoga, which was in, I think, when was this written? This is 2011. It was written in 2011 by a neuroscientist, but I found it in like around probably 2014, 2013. And it really spoke to me because, contrary to popular belief, being in a yoga class can be a stressful experience. Not stressful in the same ways where it's toxic, but stressful because you're prompted to keep yourself in uncomfortable positions for extended periods of time, but then you're also guided to breathe through it. This is talking about being in a class, by the way, but you can also practice by yourself after learning some things and practicing at least some guided classes. Then you can practice by yourself. But when you're in a class, the teacher guides you through how to sit with your feelings when you're in uncomfortable positions. So this neuroscientist, actually, it's a pretty engaging and funny article to read because it's very conversational. He talks about his experience going to a class, and he, from his first person point of view, he's like, this is so terrible. It's because, especially in hot yoga, which is what I prefer to practice, it's kind of harder to find a hot yoga studio that's open right now during the pandemic. But in a hot yoga studio, you're sweating, it's hot. You're next to like a bunch of people who are also sweating and hot. There's that one really big, hairy dude in the corner that's sweating puddles around him. Like,
Oh, lovely.
I feel like anyone that goes to a hot yoga studio knows what I'm talking about. And when you're a teacher, you're guaranteed to step in somebody else's sweat. It's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
I got over the repulsion of that very early on, but that's kind of the reality of it. I'm not selling yoga very well, am I?
You're throwing around these terms like hot yoga, positions, and when I think of yoga, I think of like the tree pose and then like contortion poses.
Well, see, that's what I told you in the beginning of the episode, is that it's not always about that. But tree pose, those are poses. They're poses. But for example, let's break down tree pose. You're on one foot. Yeah, so tree pose is the one that most people think of. A lot of people think of when they think of yoga, because it's like that one that is on every yoga flyer or like any type of yoga product, the box, the girls like standing on one foot with their hands together at their heart. While it looks the way that it looks, when the teacher's cueing how to do that pose, it's more about the micro movements in your body, like having to focus on maintaining the balance in your standing foot and then pressing your hands together while also keeping your hips open. It helps you practice this thinking about the way that your body is and how your body moves rather than what it looks like. Like, there's no room in your mind. I can't say that for everyone, but for the most part, the idea is to focus on these little things that your body is doing so that you don't think about the outside life stressors, the like the way your body looks. Like it helps you let go of that judgment the more you practice yoga. Does that make any sense to you, V?
Yeah, because I don't know if viewers know, but yoga is not my thing. So is it kind of like the meditation of doing the what do you call it, the flow that helps it with mental health, the just being mindful practice?
Yeah.
I'm sounding very I don't even know. I don't know if I'm making any kind of sense trying to figure this out.
This is interesting because it's probably good for me to try to practice explaining yoga to somebody who, like you, V, who doesn't really know a lot about it. Yeah, to what you just said, V, I'm going to come back to the idea that this neuroscientist is talking about, is that it helps train you to focus on the things that are happening in your body and to breathe through it. For example, when you're in, say, Pigeon Pose is one of the ones that is hard for a lot of people to sit still in because it opens up your hips. I don't know if it's important for me to explain what it looks like, but either way, it's called Pigeon Pose, and it's a very, very deep hip opening stretch. When you're in that position, you immediately want to get out of it because it's so uncomfortable. It's very, very uncomfortable. And there's a fine line between what's uncomfortable and growth, but also just actual dangerous pain. But the teacher teaches you how to identify that while they teach. They also guide you in a way to breathe through your pain or breathe into that discomfort so that your body is reacting in a way that's healthy for you rather than just seizing up and going into panic mode. So imagine that, but in a real life uncomfortable situation. So unconsciously, it helps you practice doing that off the mat too, because you're practicing it on the mat.
Kind of like training your mind to be ready for physical discomfort.
Physical, mental discomfort. It's very much practicing discipline in your body.
That makes sense.
And for somebody with ADHD like me, it really helped because yoga requires a lot of focus. And if I was able to focus so well on my yoga practice while I'm on the mat, it tells me that I can also do that with other stuff, like in like real life situations. I just have to put my mind to it, but I know that it's possible because I can do it in yoga.
That makes sense. What did the neuroscientist have to say about it?
He did. He talked about how it counteracts the innate response in your body to freak out and stress out when you're in a stressful situation. Because you're practicing it in yoga, it subconsciously becomes habit for you to slow down in other areas of your life and things that stress you out outside of yoga. he does talk about it in more detail in this article, which will be linked on the website too. It's a very easy article to read, I would say. He writes it in a way that's very conversational and funny. That's an article that really stood out to me when I was first practicing because it made so much sense. It's like, oh, so if I can get through this yoga class, I can practice the discipline to sit through all of, like, in a hot room with just tons of people and standing in awkward positions and stuff like that without judging myself. And these people are not judging you either. Yoga studio is a safe space for you to just disconnect from the stressful situations in your life and tune into your body. And that's basically what yoga is for. And that's what, to me, what a yoga studio was. Like, nobody's really looking at you. You don't have the capacity to really judge other people when you're focusing so much on trying to stay in the positions that you're in and build strength within your own practice. It's just like hard to even focus on other people unless you're just starting off and looking at more advanced practitioners for guidance.
So how was it for you when you first discovered yoga? Where was that like click that this can help me?
So I found yoga when I was very, very in a deep, dark, depressive episode, and I was so desperate to get out of it. And I had heard, as most people have, because it has the stereotype of helping you with depression and it helps you relax and all that stuff. It lives up to the hype, is what I'm trying to say. It does, in fact, help you. But it helps you before you even notice it's helping you. For me, it did, at least. In a way, this was at the beginning of my yoga journey, I would say. I wasn't on medication. I was on medications and I wasn't. So it's very hard for me to tap into that timeline per se, but I at one point had stopped taking medications because I thought yoga was the cure. That's not the case here.
There is no cure. Don't ever stop taking your medication, people. Talk to your doctor.
Yes, it's a different experience for everyone. You don't have to be on medication, but for me specifically, it was a bad decision to get off my medication. And it actually triggered a hypomanic episode because I think of the physiological changes in my body that was happening. Like, my body was detoxing, like sweating out toxins in my body. And I think that whatever was going on, I really, interestingly enough, I got to look into whether there's a study on something like this. But from my own experience, I truly believe that it like caused a hypomanic episode because of the changes that happened once I started practicing. And it wasn't like I was practicing once or twice a week. At the studio that I went to, they had a $30 for 30-day trial. I did all the 30 days. So it was like I went from not practicing any type of yoga to like practicing every day. And it just, the sweating, the whatever yoga did for me, it triggered a hypomanic episode.
I think any like excessive exercise would do that.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. It is a huge mind-body connection here. Your body is connected to your mind in so many different ways. And that's one of the ways that it affected me, was that like all of a sudden I started working out a lot. I lost a lot of weight. I felt really good, is what I'm trying to say. I had a lot more confidence in myself because I had lost a lot of weight and I felt more beautiful or whatever. And that spiraled into a hypomanic episode. This can happen for people with bipolar. At least like if they have a similar experience to me, is that like another thing that triggered that for me was like falling in love. It also sent me into a hypomanic episode. It's like any type of extreme positive experience can do that if I'm not properly practicing the things I need to do in order to stay stable. Anyway, back to the yoga aspect of it. Yoga is not a cure. It helps. It's a supplementary form of treatment, but maybe for more mild cases of mental illness, it may be a good solution, but for somebody like me, it wasn't the cure. And I don't have any type of permanent cure that doesn't require maintenance. It just isn't, that doesn't exist for me right now.
Well, mental health requires maintenance. Always.
Always. I'm talking about like the extreme mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is maintenance for everybody. And whether you're atypical or typical thinking, you have to maintain. Even the most typical minded people need to get out and go for a walk, to do things like practice routine and stuff like that, because it's still, it's part of what helps human nature progress.
Be functional and all that.
There are so many different types of yoga. And there is yoga that's practiced off of the mat and mental as well. I won't get too much into it in this episode specifically, but for me, I stopped practicing yoga. I didn't mean to, but just because I was traveling a lot and the pandemic, and I didn't have a yoga studio to go to, it was harder for me to stay accountable with my practice. But I was able to practice the mindset around yoga by journaling. Yoga really is more about understanding you and yourself and where you fit in with life in general and how you can live a more fluid lifestyle. So it doesn't have to be like going onto the yoga mat and doing a splits or anything like that. It's also a mental experience as well. I can also talk about the yoga that I'm familiar with and I love. I started with Bikram Yoga. There's been a lot of stuff about Bikram in the culture around that.
What is Bikram?
Bikram Yoga. You've heard of Bikram, right, V?
I've heard of hot yoga only because I drove you to a hot yoga studio once. And that's it. That's literally all I've ever heard of in terms of yoga.
Okay. I won't get into the person who started it because it's a whole thing that I'm sure, V, you will love hearing about.
Oh, there's tea.
Yes, there is tea. Lots of tea. There's a whole documentary about it. We could probably talk about it on the Cat and V show at some point. Either way, Bikram Yoga is traditionally practiced as a 90-minute yoga class in a yoga studio that's at above 85 degrees. Like even more than that. I feel like above 90. And it's holding long postures for extended periods of time. And according to Bikram and some of the studies behind it, each of these postures has a different physiological benefit for you. And I did that until there was one day where the Bikram class was canceled. It was actually Halloween, and they only had the hot Vinyasa Yoga, power yoga. And then I switched over and tried that, and that's what I currently do and teach. What the teacher at the time told me, because I was talking about how I liked Vinyasa Yoga better, is that Vinyasa Yoga, because it's very much about linking breath to movement, and it is an active type of yoga practice, you're moving in it. It kind of speaks more to like a younger energy because it's more of a workout. That's what the teacher at the time had told me. I think that Vinyasa Yoga is the type of yoga that you typically see in a lot of people. It's a very commonly practiced type of yoga. On top of that, I feel like I should address someone like you, V, because I've taught yoga to you before.
Yeah, and you got a lovely butt shot of me over Zoom attempting to do something and turning into a turtle.
It was funny. I looked over and I was like, oh.
Yeah, it wasn't working. Something was not connecting with me. I know you mentioned before that there's that mental bit. So is there like yoga just for the brain? Or is there always a mind-body connection? Is it like meditation?
The mental practice of yoga, I think that I can kind of correlate it with the yamas and niyamas. And I don't think that I can get into all of that in this podcast specifically, because it's a really big, broad topic. And if you're interested in that, go Google it. Or I can do some more research and then come back with a more solidified answer for you in a future episode. What I was alluding to before is that I wanted to talk about yoga in the context of someone like you, V. I think we got derailed a little bit.
We always do.
Yeah. So V, you've talked about your actual physical limitations when it comes to working out. And however, you've been doing so well at working out to your best ability, following different programs and stuff like that. I'm so proud of you for that. Just side note there. But because you have shorter muscles, right?
Yeah.
Stretching is a very, very dangerous activity for you. It can be, right?
Absolutely.
In my Zoom classes that I taught in the past, I was able to teach V some modifications and some Yin Yoga. Yin, Y-I-N, Yin Yoga is more restorative. So it's more, I'd say it's a more like relaxing yoga. A lot of people would say that. But it can be uncomfortable because you do sit in your feelings. But because you have such tight muscles in places, it's easier to practice a type of yoga like Yin Yoga because you have more control. A lot of Yin Yoga isn't standing. It's more sitting or propped up against the wall or using any type of prop to help stretch out muscles with more control. That's something that I think would be beneficial for someone like you, V. And it's not to say that you can't practice vinyasa. I just remember that one time you and Michael were in class and then you just disappeared off camera and I didn't know what happened to you.
Yeah, I pulled something and it was like bad for a week. And it was a simple pose and my body just could not stretch that way. Most bodies can, mine could not.
Yeah, and that just speaks a lot to me as an instructor. I should have thought about that before you started doing it. It's hard to teach remotely because I'm not in the room. Like I'm sure if I was in the room with you, I would have seen that you were struggling and told you to not do it, but it's hard.
Or shown some sort of modification for the limitations.
Yeah. There's a toxic aspect to yoga that I think needs to be talked about just a little bit, is that a lot of people find, especially people who are innately competitive in nature, like sometimes I am, I'm grateful for the fact that my body's able to do the things that it can, so I can get into these fancy postures. But it took me a while for me to grow into the mature attitude of yoga that's less about how cool it looks and more about what it does for you and your body. And as I started practicing yoga longer and I got more deeper into my practice, I realized that I don't have to do all those crazy things. That's not what it's about.
Speaking on the toxic aspect of it, you know, when you're on Instagram, if you go into any rabbit hole deep enough, everything is toxic.
I don't know. The yoga community on Instagram is always changing and it's always kind of, I am still part of it, but there's a part of it that's very superficial and I don't think it's super healthy to base your own practice off of a yoga instructor that's been teaching for 10 plus years and can put their foot on their head.
There's a lot of weird contortion you can see.
Yeah, I've got a lot of my friends can do them. I can some of it. I need to practice more. It was something that really made me feel proud, was the fact that I could do those things, but that's not what yoga's about. I think that the most important part about practicing yoga is the breath, because in a yoga class, the teachers always, and they should, I believe, cue breathing, especially in classes for new practitioners, because it's very easy to forget to breathe when you're practicing yoga, because when you're in stressful situations, you just forget to breathe sometimes. That's just what your body does. We're not in a class right now, but it's still helpful to know what type of breathing you can do in order to slow down any type of anxiety that you might be having, in order to just kind of reset yourself. So the one that I'm most familiar with is Ujjayi breath, which is the breath of victory. The best way that I can explain it to you and everyone listening is to kind of guide you through it. So,
is that how we're going to end off the episode? Doing a little...
I guess so.
That's nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little meditation. It's not meditation and yoga are so linked hand in hand that I think that it's okay to call it yoga and meditation. It's both. So wherever you are, except unless you're driving or doing
Pull over.
pull over, yeah. Unless you're driving or operating heavy machinery, don't do this. If you're sitting, align the crown of your head with your spine, your shoulders, and your hips. So straight spine. Bring your shoulders back. Squeeze your shoulder blades together to open up your chest. And if you can, maybe plant your feet into the ground. My feet actually can't reach, which is sad because I'm short. Place your hands on your knees and take a deep breath in. Close your eyes if they're not already closed. And a deep breath out. Let everything go. Let all of your stale air out of your lungs. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And then deep breath out through your mouth. That's not ujjayi breath yet, but okay. Now that we've reset our lungs and put ourselves in a more active position, take a deep breath in through your nose, slow breath. And with your lips closed, take a deep breath right back out through your nose. As if you're fogging up a windshield. Imagine making oceanic sounds with your breath, as if your breath is a wave crashing onto the beach. So take a deep breath in through your nose. Take another sip in. And a deep breath out through your nose. One more time, take a deep breath in through your nose, ujjayi breath in. And a deep breath out through your nose. You can blink open your eyes. That was ujjayi breath. You practice this throughout class. Linking your breath to movement in a vinyasa class. That's the object of that, is to really bring your attention to your breath rather than all the other things that can be jumping and bouncing around in your mind when you're in a yoga class or doing yoga. It's actually funny because it's kind of, you may feel a little embarrassed in the beginning because you're breathing in a group of people and you don't want to be heard, but it's actually more important to make noise when you breathe because that's how you know you're doing it right. So, yeah. It's funny because I was doing an online meditation with this company I used to work for, and I forgot to mute my mic, and somebody was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's just how I breathe. Sorry." I don't know. Actually, V, why don't you tell us how that felt for you?
That was nice. I haven't taken a moment to take a breath all day, and my shoulders kind of hurt. So doing that little bit of stretch that was there was nice. I thought it was very pleasant. I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to put myself in uncomfortable yoga poses while doing that. I think it could be, or at least feel, very therapeutic.
I think that uncomfortable is not the best way to describe it. I know that it's just like in the human vocabulary that I reach towards.
The human vocabulary?
The human vocabulary that I reach towards was, it is uncomfortable, but I don't want to like perpetuate the idea that yoga is just an uncomfortable experience, because it's not. It feels really good.
Being uncomfortable isn't a bad thing, and at least you're not calling it unnatural, because I've heard that description before. You contort yourself in unnatural positions.
Yeah. But there are people that can move like that, which means I feel like it does kind of highlight what the human body is capable of doing. Because if there's a person that can do it, it's clear that people can do it. It's just, you have to be safe. And those people have probably been practicing since they were kids, like gymnastics or practicing for a very, very long time. I do regret not continuing my practice, and I'm really working towards it right now to bring it back up to where it was, and not because of the physical aspect, but also like I'm figure skating now. So all of those movements, like the strength building and the flexibility, it transfers over to figure skating. I should have talked more about doing yoga helps build muscles around your joints too, and that prevents injury. And stretching out your muscles regularly can also prevent injury, so that your muscles aren't tight when you trip or fall over or do something, because that's how people hurt themselves. If your muscles are already looser and if you're more flexible, you're less likely to get injured.
That's a good thing to know.
Yeah. So that's like, it's funny because I roll over my ankles a lot when I walk because I'm clumsy. And I haven't like hurt them. I should knock on wood for that one. But I think that if I didn't practice yoga, that would have really been, I could have really like sprained an ankle with the way that I sometimes walk. But yeah.
Clomp, 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 clomp.
Yeah. I need to be more graceful when I walk. I filmed myself the other day and I was like, wow, I walk like a duck waddling.
That's not bad. I flop when I walk and everything jiggles.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I think this is
a good place to end for today.
Yeah, this is a good place to end for today. Anyway, if you have any more questions or anything you'd like to ask me about my experience with yoga, you can go ahead and comment on any of my posts on my Instagram. I'll be happy to answer questions. It's Kitty Cat Dang. I do. Yoga is something that really changed my life, and I hope that after hearing this, you guys feel more comfortable exploring that option and that activity. Because it can be scary, but it's not. Yoga's not scary.
Yeah, check out our Instagram for How's That Working For You. You can also get more information on our website. It will be linked on the Instagram page.
And subscribe to wherever you like to listen to your podcasts.
Bye. Interested in sponsoring the Pull Up a Chair podcast network?
Want to be heard by the audience of all 4 of our original shows?
All sponsorships through our non-for-profit are tax deductible.
More information can be found in the description of this podcast.
Sarah and Scooter Podcast is a conversation between,
you guessed it,
Sarah
and Scooter. We are not experts on any of these topics.
Just hoping to spark something like an idea, conversation, or even a revelation.
Subjects will vary depending on our friends, family, and community.
Sometimes it will be what we want to talk about.
New episodes drop every week on all of your favorite podcast formats.
So pull up a chair and
let's talk about stuff.